Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, because we're already recording.
Okay.
So this meme is a little bit dark. So's the book. And if you're immersed in Reddit meme culture, you're already
I'm not.
probably familiar with Danny DeVito as Frank Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Anyway,
Vaguely.
in the prologue, it's really easy to imagine Wax, played by Danny DeVito, and he sees his wife held hostage by the serial killer. Bloody Tam, starts taunting Wax and Leslie, and Wax's response is, "So anyway, I started blasting."
It's very dark there. And also, they practice this situation.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, started blasting. Anyway. Hello and welcome to Cosmere Casual, your casual reader's guide for the Cosmere Curious. I'm your co-host, actually kind of sort of unprepared this time, Nick Gorman.
And I am very prepared, AJ Gorman.
Yeah. So the reason why I say that is because I only kind of sort of a little bit wrote up some notes, but this is definitely AJ's show today.
But we're also trying to make this a little bit more stress-free for you.
I mean, yeah, and also flowy a little bit better, So it's, in some ways it's better not to have two people trying to drive the same car at the same time. Huh.
Yeah, it's kind of like when we both got in a tandem kayak.
Oh, God, Lord. Oh, good Lord. I mean...
Marriage test number 1. Okay.
Not number 1, but yeah, it's up there.
Never do that again. Okay.
We've done it multiple times.
We have done it multiple times.
It's just like we keep recording this podcast.
I feel like it's not we don't seek that out anymore like we did the first time.
All right, to be fair, now we've got kids. It's hard just to get time out. Anyway, whatever. It's all good.
I don't know who's a better tandem or who's the worst tandem partner, because your youngest will just be half outside of the kayak the entire time.
I mean,
and I'm like, if you fall in, I mean, you got a life jacket, I guess, so whatever.
As bad as it looks for me, you can't compare me to a 1-year-old.
Oh, he was less than 1 at that point.
He was? I thought that was at least after. Anyway,
maybe, I don't know. I don't know who's worse tandem kayak person to be with, but okay. I thought maybe we would just kind of do a quick plot summary of this book. So here we go. Wax.
Also, if you hear sounds in the background, that's because our older toddler is playing quietly. And if you're
not
YouTube,
napping.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Wax grew up in the city. He's twin-born, which means he has allomantic and feruchemic. Okay, great. Feruchemic abilities. Those two abilities share the same metal, which...
No, it's steel and iron. He's not...
Oh, that... Okay.
Yeah, I would say he can steel push, and he can use iron to store his weight.
Fantastic. Okay. He's grew up unhappy in the city. He ran off to the roughs. He got married there. Hallelujah. His uncle was kind of left in charge, and then his uncle and his sister and his aunt died altogether, kind of leaving him as a house lord, as we saw in the prologue.
Did he and Leslie actually get married?
Yes.
Oh, for some reason I thought they were just common law married.
No, they got married. So, as we saw in the prologue, Wax actually shoots Leslie and kills her.
In the face.
Not on purpose. So she dies, by his hand. He kind of has a mental breakdown and decides that, you know what, I'm gonna escape again and go back to the city, take up this house lord thing, because there's nothing left for him in the roughs. There's a robbery that happened right before he comes back, which is right around the time of his uncle's death. Suspicious much.
But I mean, it wasn't. It was the latest in a string of robberies.
Well, the first string happened right before.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then this whole book is him just kind of chasing down...
Pause. Leo, sir. All right, great. So this whole book is
just Wax kind of unraveling this complicated robbery string, and really having this revelation that the city is actually more dangerous than the roughs, and there are less lawmen per capita.
Okay, that's not
in the city than in the roughs.
I mean, yes, those are...
The nature of the crime is a little bit different. Tends to be.
I was about to say, I think it's over-reductive to say that the city is more dangerous than the roughs. They're dangerous in different ways.
It's more nuanced for sure, but it wasn't as black and white as what kind of Wax was thinking it was.
Yes. Either as a child or when he moved back.
Correct. So that's my plot summary.
Naturally. That's just like the setup.
Yeah. Pretty much. Okay, we'll go into the heist.
I didn't prepare anything either, so I guess I can't really complain.
Reminiscent of Era 1, this is all about the heist. We talked about this in the pre-read episode, but instead of we're fighting for the people doing the heist, we are now on the other side, on the side of the people who are trying to figure out...
The lawmen.
We're on the side of the lawmen.
The law folk, but...
The law folk trying to figure out the heist. So it's a very complicated robbery scheme, so it's kind of worth going over.
Do we want to share the punchline first so we can have that in mind as we break it all down? Because otherwise...
Yeah, go for it.
So the punchline, like you said, was on one level, insurance fraud.
Yes.
And then on another level, there was kidnappings that were unrelated to the insurance fraud, but they both used the robberies as cover.
Yeah, so there's many different layers here. So the first layer is that Miles
Daggett, Miles' 100 Lives.
Yeah, another lawman out in the roughs who kind of turned evil-ish.
Do you think Daggett started out as do-gooder, but then got corrupted a little bit?
My brain hurts.
I have that effect on some people.
Okay. So anyways, Miles is now the youngest is doing harmonica.
Oldest? Do you think the harmonica is going to come up on the podcast?
Are you sure that's not coming from that direction?
It is coming. Okay, so that is the youngest.
Anyways, so
headphones on the monitor, whatever.
Anyway, so Miles is helping to steal a bunch of aluminum and other goods, and the way that he's doing that is actually stealing entire train cars.
Yes.
So how he's kind of creating mystique or mysterious circumstances around that is he's actually creating an entire duplicate of these train cars and then kind of swapping them out so that when
with a barge
with a barge and a crane, so that when the train arrives it looks like it's the same car but it's empty, when really they took the car with the contents and are taking it back to a warehouse and actually kind of taking hours and hours to break it open and get to the contents there. So that's one part of it. So that's stealing from the trains. The Vanishers are also kind of doing some of their things by going to these populated places and also taking hostages as well as goods.
And the hostages, as Wax uncovers, are all from families with rather direct lineage to Lord Mistborn, right? So they've got... Yeah, but I mean, he's not called that in this book.
I know, but that's how he is in my brain. It's just kind of like Hoyt is not Hoyt to me. Hoyt is Wit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by having that strong allomantic progenitor, is that too big of a word?
Yes.
Okay, by having that strong lineage, is that too big of a word?
No, that's fine.
I'd say by having allomancy in the family, they increase the odds that the people that are abducted are allomancers, have their own magic powers as well.
And they are all women.
They're all women.
Yes, we'll get into that in a minute. So from, that's what Miles is doing. Miles is in it to get the actual goods and kind of face value of what's taken. However, he is working for Mr. Suit, which we find out is actually Wax's uncle.
Less dead than reported.
Yes. So what Mr. Suit is in it for is for those hostages. But he's also in it for the insurance fraud. So he is trying to, there are a couple notes in the books that are saying that, all of the goods, a lot of the goods that were taken are actually taken from House
Tekiel?
Tekiel? However you pronounce it. So Mr. Suit, obviously in House Tekiel is, in financial ruin over this. So Mr. Suit buys up their debt, and then all of a sudden, all the goods that were stolen magically appear. And so now he has all of House Tekiel's assets without really having to pay for any of it.
Yep.
Because all of a sudden there's not, they don't have to pay. He bought up all the insurance companies, but doesn't have to pay out because all of the goods reappear.
See, was it insurance or is that security? Whatever. It was fraud. Yeah.
Well, I think they were holding the insurance.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And he would have had to pay out on the insurance if the goods never appeared. But since he was holding on to all of the goods, he could make them appear. One of the things that... So I always kind of forgot. There's so much time between each reread for me that I always kind of forget how the heist is done and also like what Mr. Suit is up to.
I completely completely forgot about the insurance/securities fraud aspect of it.
Well,
I thought they were just stealing shit.
I also forget that they like switch out the entire train. But anyways, but I did notice kind of in this reading, I must have remembered like halfway through because I noticed in this reading that I feel like Brandon's like poking fun at us, like laying it out there. Because here's this quote: Harmony, you could build your own train for that kind of money. Which is funny because that's what Miles is actually doing, is recreating the train. And it's very clear that the constables in Wax are not really thinking about modern technology when they're trying to figure out this heist. Like, they're not used to thinking of there being cranes that could be on boats.
Oh, yeah.
Their go-to is always like, it must be an allomancer.
Well, and that's how we the reader think.
Or
also.
multiple allomancers.
And that's how we the reader think also, because we're just like, oh, of course it's a magical setting, so of course it's all gonna be about the magic. Well,
no, it's not. Subverting expectations once again, Brandon.
Well, and like the magic does play into it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Miles, yeah. Miles,
but that's not at the core of the heist.
No, but it's at the core of the conflict.
Yes, Mr. Suit / Alexa's uncle is definitely up to more than what we know.
Yep.
We have barely uncovered the tip of the iceberg when it comes to his uncle.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Okay. You want to talk about some of the magic system?
I did. Well, and so we've had a few developments compared to where we ended Era 1. For one thing, we've got 2 new metals that are very important to the plot of this book, right? You've got chromium and bendalloy, and those are both time-based metals. Like, Wayne creates speed bubbles around him, and that's, I'm not going to explain it any better than happens in the book. And Marasi can do the opposite, where she creates a bubble that is slow time, where everybody inside thinks that time is passing normally, but then the world around them is speeding up, and that's pretty important to the plot. That's how they catch Miles is with Marasi's speed bubble. But I think the one that's more complicated and maybe worth digging into more is resonances versus compounding.
Resonances?
Yeah. We don't see a whole lot of it, but so we'll start about compounding, because that one's very important to the plot of this book.
Okay, and that's when your two allomantic and
ferrochemical
skills share a metal.
I mean, I think it's more generically when you have multiple types of magic abilities that stack on top of each other, right?
Okay.
And so I think we saw this very briefly in some of the lore dumps in Era 1 about how the Lord Ruler was able to live so long and maintain power, but it wasn't really relevant to the events happening on screen then. So this is our first real dive into it. And basically, if you're an allomancer, when you're burning a metal, you're tapping into Preservation's investiture, right? You can flare a metal to burn it faster and access more of his Preservation's investiture at once. Or if you're an inherently stronger allomancer, then you can also access it easier, just more efficiently with the same amount of metal. Versus if you're a Feruchemist, you store your own innate abilities inside a metal mind. Then you draw it out. Then you draw that same amount of ability out later. So we see Wayne get sick for a while, storing health in his gold mind, and then tapping it later to heal more quickly after he gets shot. And there's may be some wiggle room about hey, what might make it more or less efficient for a Feruchemist, but that's really for another episode. Where we get into, with Miles in particular, he's, like you said, he's a Feruchemist and an allomancer, a fairing and a misting of the same metal. So he's gold on gold. And those abilities stack on top of each other, which is weird because you wouldn't think gold, the ability to look into the spiritual realm and see other versions of your past self, has anything to do with storing health, right? They're not at all related. But the way it works for Twinborns is when he stores health into his gold mines and then burns those same gold mines that are storing his health, he gets back, and while he's tapping into it, he gets back the health that he was storing in there of his own health, but then it also gets supercharged by Preservation's investiture, by his allomancy. Presumably the amount that it's supercharged by is related to how strong he is as an allomancer, but we don't really get into the scale other than my goodness, it's not a 1-to-1 kind of thing. It's, exponential returns.
So I realize that there's science to this.
Yeah.
And rules, but in my head I just go, woo.
So, but
just hand waviness.
Well, but I think
Because
that
I can't take the time to like really put it in my head. It's like, all right, whatever.
yeah, but I mean,
Miles is unkillable. Sure, let's go with it.
right, but he could but I guess where I'm trying to go with this is that it's ferrochemical skills that can be boosted in this way, not allomancy. Right? So you never have a supercharged steel push through compounding, right? You only are able to store a little bit of health and get a whole lot in return.
So if Wax had been
or
able to
store-
share a metal, he would only be able to supercharge his weight.
Yeah, or the other way around. If he were a steel runner, he would be able to be the Flash, right?
Be quick. Yeah.
Be quick, right? Because he stores, yeah, right. But where it's, I think, but the other thing is like, so in the appendix, right, the Ars Arcanum in the back, you can look through those ferrochemical properties. And so there's like age, there's fortune, which I think is like luck in this context, but nobody's really sure. There's, there's the senses, there's all these things, and those can all be boosted if you are a compounder in those skills. So for the Lord Ruler, the two most relevant ones for being basically immortal were,
which same as Miles, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, more
because
he was a full-born, which is not a term on screen, but it's something the fandom uses, where he's both a full Farouk Mist and a Mistborn. And so he could store his age in Adium, and he could, so he could stay eternally young and eternally healthy.
And live forever. Whereas Miles is aging.
Yes. But that's different from like Wax and Wayne, where their metals aren't the same. But Wax still clearly has some kind of a resonance where his multiple powers that complement each other. We see a lot more with resonances on screen.
Oh, because being able to change your weight is highly advantageous for steel pushing.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so, like, we see it several times, not, they don't draw too much attention, Brando doesn't draw too much attention to it in this book, but we see a lot of how Wax changes his weight to manipulate his steel pushes better. Like, when he needs to be the one who's going flying, he makes himself light as a feather. And when something else needs to go, he draws upon his weight and just makes himself...
We see this a ton of times in this book.
Right. But we don't see any of the more interesting applications until later in this series.
Obviously, I remember all of those.
Yeah. And
we'll have to see.
I think it's Bands of Mourning and the Lost Metal in particular. Because when you think about conservation of linear momentum versus conservation of energy, it's interesting.
You sound like an engineer.
I am an engineer. Use me.
I don't know where your PE is.
Okay, fine. I'm an idiot.
Okay. All right.
Can I count this as engineering training and studying under you?
Not.
Somehow I don't think there's a PE exam for Cosmere studies.
Probably could one by the time Brandon's done.
Yeah. Silverlight University. But that's for a different episode.
Anything else about the magic system that we should be...
No, I mean...
Wait, what was the definition of resonance that you were using?
It's when you've got multiple powers that complement each other.
Oh, the complementing.
But don't stack. Where it's, compounding is where you've got two different powers that makes one of them just completely supercharged beyond what you would, otherwise be able to do. Right? And then resonance is where you've got two powers that complement each other and manifest in a kind of a third way, right?
Okay. Cool. Let's talk about some character work. I want to say that Wax is pretty uncultured. I'm like, in the beginning, I'm still horrified reading about Wax. I mean, he shoots the cobblestone road. Like, he just shoots it. It's like the same problem as the Avengers. They have no concern for the damage they cause.
So, like, yeah.
And he's just shooting small pieces of metal anywhere. And he's like, oh, well, like, they'll barely be moving fast enough when they hit people.
Yeah. Like, people do shoot guns in the air, and then the bullets come down and do kill people. Like, that is a thing that happens.
And Wax has no concern for that whatsoever.
I know. You're right. You're 1,000% right. I read it differently.
Okay.
It's not that he is uncultured. It's that he is so...
A fish out of water?
He's so contrarian, right? When he was in the roughs, he made it a point to wear this cravat and, be a gentleman and yada, yada, yada. And then he goes into high society where he's supposed to be an aristocrat and he acts like a hooligan, right? And he makes it a point of acting like a hooligan.
No one's actually paying attention to this point. Like, he is just out there flying by himself. He's not in front of an audience, and he's just shooting paving stones. And it's like, even if there were no paving stones, he would have made a big old pothole. And like, why would you would you do that in the roughs too? Like, people are not going to be happy that you're shooting craters into where people are trying to walk.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's about him. It's all right. I'm in the city. I need to be a hooligan. I need to be, destructive to the things. I need to be in conflict with the world around me.
It annoys me to no end every time I read about,
Yes, he's annoying.
Yes.
But in a rough kind of way. I mean, the people around him are also clearly annoyed by him. Maybe not when they're busy hero worshipping him, but I
want to talk about Wax and Steris first, and then we can talk about Wax and Marasi.
Fair enough. Okay, let's go.
Okay, so Steris, I love Steris.
Okay.
I didn't love her the first read, but every read after that, I love Steris.
She just doesn't have much of a part in this book.
No, but the part when she is on screen, she's really lovely. Okay, she likes things done thoroughly. All right, the marriage contract, planning for
no arguments here.
Planning for dalliances on both sides.
Oh, I got needs.
And Steris is actually very perceptive. Okay.
Yeah.
Just as you were noting, Wax was, what does this note say? So Wax uses his clothes and manner to dupe people, especially when he's out in the rough. And Steris berates him for acting like a ruffian, and really playing it up.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. And I love that she recognizes it and she calls it out, which is just awesome.
Well, they're supposed to get married and they got to be equal partners there, so she should call him out on his shenanigans.
I do want to call back to Mistborn Era 1, where this is kind of the same trick that is being played when Elend wears white in an ash-filled world, really using the clothing to manipulate image and everything.
And something about how important the image is, and mist cloaks, totally non-functional, but it's about the image, man.
If I have not drilled it into people's heads enough that the mist cloaks are freaking dumb, there's no hope for you all.
Yeah. Well, I
love you anyways, cousins.
It's not about the
but
function.
The mist cloak.
It's about sending a message. It's about sending a message. The message might be dumb.
Do Steris and Wax make sense?
Obviously.
I don't know if it's that clear in this book. Wax wants to trust. Steris has a hard time trusting.
No.
They both have kind of trust issues.
No. They make sense as a political arrangement, right? It's right there at the beginning. That's like what they lead with is his name has prestige, her family has money.
Definitely
and
makes sense.
His family has, his name has no money to it. Her family has no prestige to them.
Okay, but setting that aside, like, do they make sense as a couple?
That doesn't matter to them. That doesn't matter to them.
They still have to live with each other.
Do they? Is that in the contract?
Well, they do need to produce air.
Yeah.
I love that Steris is so wise and like catches Wax off guard sometimes. She says, "You are
wise.
You are what you choose to be, Waxilium.
Maybe she is.
Therefore, I make of myself something that can survive this environment."
Okay.
And she just has these little like moments of wisdom drops that are just awesome. And then, at the very end, after Steris has been off screen the whole time, we've been spending all this time with Marasi. There's a note in here that Steris is aroused at the whole ordeal, and with Wax saving her and bringing her up into the air. And I'm like, I think that Steris is really into this.
Swoon.
Yes. So maybe they're not such a bad match after all. Maybe there just needs a little bit more room for growth and love to blossom.
There's 3 more books.
There are 3 more books. But Steris is just awesome.
Yeah. Now, something you mentioned there that I noticed but wasn't able to draw any conclusions out of in this read through was I tried to keep track of when he was Waxilium and when he was Wax. And when you're looking at it from his point of view, he's mostly Waxilium. When you look at him from Wayne's point of view, he's mostly Wax.
Oh, you think Waxilium calls himself Waxilium instead of Wax?
Certainly. Well, not in the prologue, not when he's out in the roughs. But when he's in the city, he's trying to think of himself as Waxilium, trying to be more proper.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly that. And then there's also
and obviously, Steris calls him Waxilium. I can't remember about Marasi.
And then you also don't know. There's got to be an element to it where it's like when you're writing a novel, how many times do you want to write out Waxilium or type out Waxilium rather than wax?
Except in dialogue, he is mostly Waxilium in this book. I'm like,
no. I think it's definitely more of the trying to get wax in the frame, Waxilium in the frame of mind that he's supposed to be a house lord and all that stuff. But
I'm gonna keep calling him Wax.
Yeah, Waxilium's just a lot. Let's talk about Wax and Marasi.
Okay.
So this is the Bill Monica vibes that you were talking about in the previous episode.
Right. Well, and really, it's passing on the sentiment from my brother-in-law, but I also agree with it now that it's been pointed out.
I mean, yeah, I didn't. The thing is, when this reread, there were constant reminders that Wax does not find Marasi attractive. He keeps saying, well, I probably should be attracted to her. I would have been, but I'm not. Well, he keeps reiterating that.
Right. But it's about, I read that and thought that he was thinking he's just not ready to get into an actual relationship again.
I suppose that's fair.
But that if he were, Marasi would be a good candidate. I don't know. It's hard to talk about these in sterile terms like that.
I don't know. I read it more as that he's just so heartbroken that he doesn't want anything that would possibly remind him.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Of Leslie.
He's not ready. He's not ready to get,
But ever, even when when he's done having a,
when he's healing.
Even after he's done healing, that would just be a terrible homage to her memory to get, have someone similar. I don't know.
But the, living as a person in a society, we're not consuming this book in a vacuum. And certainly just coming off of it reads differently with the Me Too movement in mind, right? And a lot of Wayne's antics are the same way, where it's Wax is a powerful figure, both literally, but also his brand, his name recognition. He had a reputation, right? And Marasi knew of him before she met him, right? And she definitely looked up to him. And that is...
I'm not disagreeing about the Bill and Monica vibes. Definitely
right.
there.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm just so it that Wax as a hero, didn't, try to take advantage of her, because he wouldn't have been trying, right?
Right.
He just would have, at least if, past his precedent or whatever. Whereas and that was part of why, having that so close to Wayne and his obviously not reciprocated, feelings toward Renette, and how it was sort of played for laughs that he was, so insistent on, getting with her. And it rubbed me the wrong way this time. Yeah, no, I don't know. I thought Wayne's antics were just a little bit, I don't know. Like I said, the first time I read through it, I just thought he was funny. Maybe not hilarious, but it was welcome comic relief. And then this time through, I was just I like the hat switching stuff. And,
the hat switching stuff is,
and especially because
very funny.
I use that analogy at work all the time. Where it's all right, I'm going to take off my quality engineer hat and put on my, my R&D engineer hat, and things like that.
I do hear you use that all the time.
And it's, very much Wayne is literally taking people's hats.
Well, I wanted to scream at Marasi, because she was always forgetting that she was saving Wax too.
Well, and that's
and that she was being useful.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to scream at her. Going back to Wayne, I really enjoy Wayne.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy Wayne and Marasi together.
Okay. Yeah.
As much emphasis as there is on Wax and Marasi, there's tons of kind of small moments between Wayne and Marasi. I mean, Wayne tells Marasi about his history.
Yeah.
They're able to kind of connect through their similar but opposite, allomantic abilities. He's a deputy that can't shoot, which is just really funny, even though it's a sad story. Marasi picks up on picking on Wayne, pretty quickly. Wayne does get embarrassed around her in slight ways. And he doesn't kind of want to share what he was like after first joining Wax. Wayne cuts Wax off.
Yeah.
Which is not something we ever kind of see him do.
Yeah, and
that's like the singular instance. So I don't know. There's lots of very kind of cute moments there.
Yeah.
I do like kind of Wayne saying that people's voices are like living things and that they adapt to the environment. I don't know, like, how does globalization change all?
Are you talking about like in the real world? I think
Are there
globalization
smaller
is
differences?
I think globalization is the wrong driver because I mean that's sort of been going on to various extents since like the 1800s or something.
Yeah, but the world is
1400s.
much smaller in a lot of ways.
Yeah, telecommunications. People exchange accents, and I mean
we have common experiences now. I mean, the whole world went to Taylor Swift's concert, right?
We have things pushing us in.
We didn't go, but anyways.
We have things pushing us in opposite directions as well as together, right? So on the togetherness front, like, yeah, we all watch a lot of the same TV shows, right? Or movies. Like everybody watched Game of Thrones, right? Or, everybody's seen Marvel movies, right? So like there's more of those shared points of connection, but then there's also subcultures that are really hyper specific and have their own meme culture, their own lingo.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Meme culture's now a thing where it wasn't before.
Right. And like, I think, that reflects in our ways of talking, which is as much as what Wayne was talking about as literal how your voice sounds, your accent, right?
Well, it's also the words that you use because
Right.
I noticed this with you and Lynn. Like after you hang out with Lynn,
well, maybe we shouldn't talk about people who haven't given consent to have their names on the podcast, but we can,
There's a lot of people named Lynn.
Yeah, fair enough. It could be Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's not, but it could be.
But you use different phrases after hanging out with Lynn, for sure. And I definitely pointed out to you and make fun of you.
I think you mean 100p, not for sure. 100p.
100. Porque no los dos.
Yeah, it's true.
And there's a bunch of others.
Yeah.
I notice it with books. Like if I go back and read like any Jane Austen stuff, or start swearing in whatever latest Cosmere book, I notice that with myself. Like not even out. Like I don't tend to say it out loud, but I think about it. I think in those terms in my head to myself, and I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
Also, you do that with podcasts, depending on what podcasts you've been listening to lately.
I mean, I have a lot of McElroy's
yes.
because I listen to so many of their, but not nearly as much as they put out, which is just even wilder to me. But anyway.
Well, they have whole teams.
Yeah. And, anyway, whatever.
Okay. Let's talk about the butler.
The butler.
It's always the butler.
It's always the butler. Okay.
Tilum? Whatever. I always forget that Tilum works for his uncle. Even on rereads, it always surprises me, which I kind of like because I do like having pretending to read it for the first time again.
Sometimes you want to be surprised.
Yes.
Yeah, right? Like that's a fun experience.
But again, this is just another case of subverting expectations on Brandon's part because we're just so used to trusting Terrace people. Like there was not one Terrace person that we could distrust in Era 1.
Was he explicitly Terrace?
Yes, he was. So this is as a reader, this is the first Terrace person that we've come across that we couldn't trust as a through and through good person who's kind of helping us, helping the story out.
I want to say in the Final Empire, book 1 of Mistborn, there was a Terrace servant who worked for whatever, I'm blanking on her name, Shan, the minor antagonist. Yeah, Ellen's ex-fiance. Yeah. I want to say she had a Terrace servant who was more aligned with her values.
I think it's pretty common for people to, think that equate Terrace people with always good feelings and
I thought it was
full-throated hug, trust kind of thing. And
so I had a very similar reason to be. I had a very similar being surprised about the butler's betrayal, but for completely different reasons.
What's that?
I saw so many parallels with Batman in Wax, and then and with Batman, his butler's Alfred, his most trusted friend, and so it was to me like, oh yeah, this isn't Batman, right?
I did not get that at all, but also I didn't watch a whole lot of Batman growing up.
Well, there were. I just felt like I kept seeing parallels to, oh yeah, we're gonna go to our Bat cave, right? And like there is a literal cave that they go in and grab shit out of, right? It's not their cave, right? But they're going and they're going.
A lair, you mean? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and they go into the villain's lair, both Bloody Tam and then later on into the Vanisher's lair, right?
All right.
It was very much, and especially the manor blowing up reminds me a lot of Batman Begins, where okay, the Wayne mansion blows up, and then they rebuild it with secret hideaways in there, so that way he can go and fight crime as a secret double life, right?
I do want to talk about the house blowing up because Saloon did try to kill Wax 3 times successively in a row, which
very Rasputin vibes.
Kudos to them for being prepared to have 3 different ways to kill Wax, but also not prepared enough.
Well,
and maybe it's because they were not prepared for Wayne or Marassi to be there.
Huh? Tea's poisoned. That line gets me every time. Huh? Tea's poisoned. Oh yeah, so it is.
Oh my god. Yes.
And people say people say that Brando Sando doesn't do good comedy. He's got, he's good.
The next book, Trust in the Emerald Sea, that does have a lot of comedy in it.
And then the one after that, Words of Radiance, is some of like the best lines, the best memes come from Words of Radiance. So yeah, impressed, frankly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Miles, I do find it funny knowing that Miles is the one who is the bad guy, that when Wayne first shows up and Wax is just like, well, why didn't you call Miles?
Yeah.
It was just like, what?
I want to talk about Miles. I want to talk about Miles and Marassi. Is it now an okay time?
Miles and Marassi.
They don't have any interactions together on screen. Well, maybe a couple, but they both are motivated by the same things, right? Where Miles is so upset that he keeps trying to bring order out in the roughs, but ultimately it's because things are so corrupt in Elendil, in the Elendil Basin, right? That nothing that he does out in the roughs is going to make a difference. And Marassi looks at that in a very similar light, and she sees that same problem. And she also says, well, hold on, there's more lawmen per capita out in the roughs than there are here in the city. Why are things so different? And she says, yes, there's different crimes, things like that. But her approach is that it's not, we need to, blow everything up and kill all the bad people or whatever. It's,
we need to change the environment.
Right. The quality engineer in me, putting on my quality engineer hat, it's like, oh yeah, you don't blame the person, you blame the process, you blame the system. You make systemic fixes that actually address the root causes, right?
Yeah, this is all freakonomics stuff.
I mean, or, I could go pull out wherever my ASQ handbooks ended up after the, last reorg of our books. I mean,
it's all real stuff that happens in our real world.
And I don't know. I think if we had more of an in-depth conversation with them on screen, I think if this ever got adapted, I think there would be more of a, we're not so different, you and I, kind of thing.
Okay, there's too much of happening in between Wax and Miles with that
That's
regard.
True. Right.
What I'm annoyed about it with Miles is that he says he was betrayed by the city, and like to me that was all a little kind of wishy-washy. There wasn't anything concrete anchor to that to me.
Yeah,
I would have appreciated more anchor point.
He's not the most stable person. I think unanchored, untethered is probably the best. That's a very good adjective for Miles.
All right.
And
but he does like and respect Wax, even though he has no problems killing him.
Well, clearly he has problems killing him. He can't do it. I think Miles, he makes it a big point that he doesn't even feel pain anymore, right?
Right.
But like, you don't become an Allomancer without snapping, right? Like, I know they don't bring that up after the Final Empire.
Snapping is different in Era 2. Like, I think they talk about it in the next book, but they make the snapping threshold a lot lower.
Okay. But he's been shot in the face so many times. He's been blown up by dynamite so many times.
By his own hand.
No, by people he was trying to catch, right?
But also by his own hand as well.
Also by his own hand. But, he says he doesn't feel pain anymore, but really he's tortured himself till his mind is gone, right?
True.
And that's like, a lot of the things he say, like, there is a nugget of truth in them, but it's so twisted and deranged. Like he's just he's gone insane.
I also have a hard time believing like Wax must have thought of a way to bring Miles down before the events of this book.
Yeah, I mean Batman with prep time, right? Oh, sorry. I don't know. They're
because I mean both of them kind of admitted that like I always thought you guys would turn, the other one would turn or whatever. Like they had to have been in the back of their minds thinking of ways to bring the other person in.
Right, but they were also, what do I want to say?
How was Wax gonna figure this out without Morassi? Like, he had to have had another plan.
But we see attempts from both of them that just fail.
Yeah.
Right? Miles thinks that, he can just overpower Wax, right? Like, just, take enough punches to the face and, not flinching, it doesn't matter, right? Or, get shot, it doesn't matter. As long as I keep coming for you, I'm going to get you, right? And and Wax is like, well, if I throw a net on him, he'll get caught and it won't be a problem. Right, and he won't be able to get out of the net
because he's not stronger than another person. Yeah.
Right, but then but they each have countermeasures for those that they don't, that the other doesn't think about. They don't really. They're not thinking 4 steps ahead. They're only thinking like 2. Right.
Okay. Yeah. Fair.
Yeah.
And Miles hates hats.
Yeah. Well,
which is in contrast to Wayne. So another clue as to why we shouldn't like Miles. Doesn't like hats.
And I think it is noteworthy, though, that, like you said, like they each must have thought of countermeasures for the other, but nobody thought of Morassi.
Yep.
And that's ultimately, she's the one who gets him.
Yep.
Wax gets the credit, of course.
Wayne had a fair chunk of
credit.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I want to talk about Wax's uncle.
Okay.
/ Mr. Suit.
What's his first name? I know he's Uncle Adrian, but, don't worry about it.
I don't know if we have his name. Do we have his name?
No. Mr. Suit.
But I do want to say, so this is
Eddie Warren. That might be in a later book.
Yeah, I know it might be in this book. That sounds familiar. I do want to say that I had only read the audiobook version before, I think. Well, I had never noticed that it was Mr. was always spelled out rather than Mr. Mr. Suit.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that either.
I don't know what we're supposed to think about that, but I'm quite sure we were supposed to think of something about that.
I got nothing.
There's some significance there. It just eludes me. Okay. So when we were first kind of hearing about the uncle, it's a mash of conflicting information because we're told that he was a negligent person who ran the house into the ground. But then all of these details come up. He was a gambler, but quite good at gambling.
Well,
he usually came out ahead, far ahead. The old Lord Lodrian has kept very good track of what his competitor houses had been shipping. Fortunately, my uncle's library has extensive genealogical resources. It was a hobby of his. None of this screams like a person who would be running the house into a grid. All of this screams nefarious things.
You happen to be right, so it's hard for me to argue against you, but I don't agree. He could just be hyper focused on certain aspects of running his house and letting that take over to the point that his house falls into ruin anyway, right? And especially the thing about being a good gambler, he often ended up far ahead. But that just makes you more confident to take riskier and riskier bets, right?
I don't know. I think the information that we're told about his uncle, especially in the beginning of the book, does not add up. And we're not even told about Wax's personal history with his uncle. It's barely touched in this first novel.
Yeah.
I do want to say though that this whole thing about Wax being the House Lord was never the original plan.
The original plan by Brando Sando or by Mr. Suit?
By Mr. Suit.
Gotcha.
Mr. Suit
original. It was never the in-world original plan.
Yes. Mr. Suit had always intended for his son to take over. Yeah. But his son did actually die of disease unexpectedly.
Which, do we ever get that guy's name? I was about to call him a kid, but I don't know. I don't know.
If it's mentioned this once. So, yes, so that is confusing. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
Another clue that we get is that Mr. Suit leaves because he thinks Wax is getting too close. A very stark clue for us. Also that he kind of wanted to resist killing Wax at first. I do like that Mr. Suit does, he's a mysterious, all-powerful figure, but he does admit fault.
All power.
Well, anyways, he's a mysterious figure that normally you don't allow that kind of character to show fault at all. But we do get this one moment where Mr. Suit admits that, like, if I had been paying attention, like, I wouldn't have had you capture Steris.
Yeah.
So I do love that. I think it does give the character a little bit more depth and whatnot.
And, like, it's not like you're Frodo going against Sauron, right?
Okay, one more thing under the uncle. So we know that he's kind of taking all of these women with the Alamantic lineages, presumably for breeding an army. And I'm like, is the plan to go, like, the traditional route with just, like, raping these women and going that route? Or are we far enough along that they maybe have kind of IVF technology? It's very unclear.
And I think it's supposed to be unclear at this point and not savory. And, I'm reminded that in Mistborn Era 1, there was a lot of rape off screen. It was talked about a lot. And that was one of the things that Vin and Ellen talked about, right?
Well, right, because anytime someone, of the ministry had sex with a whore, they were supposed to kill them afterwards.
So, like, that was, it was
I guess it was the ministry and the House Lord. Okay. A couple things on the Sandor Lynch. The Iron Spine building was definitely mentioned at the beginning. Definitely a Chekhov's gun. Was it super necessary to collapse the entire building on top of the tunnel? No. Another Marvel Avengers problem. I do love the fact that Miles is super cool with Wax being in the train car when he steals it. And he's just telling his henchmen, like, yeah, he's in there. Yeah. I don't know how, but he's in there.
It shouldn't be possible.
But he's in there. And then Push and Pull are just like, wait a minute, you brought him back to our lair? Like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Totally fair. Fair. Wax is super cavalier about killing a bunch of people all at once with dynamite. Like, they're just red shirts and whatever in the book. But still, it definitely calls back to Kelsier vibes with all of that for me.
Yeah. Makes you wonder if Wax and Miles, if we're not so different, you and I. You kill your enemies, I kill mine.
I think the Sandor Lynch moment where we've got the cool image of the basement warehouse with the lights turned off and their fires burning randomly, I think that was an awesome visual. I don't often take time in my brain to actually visualize things, but that one was pretty cool that I did actually take some mental brain power to build that in my brain. One question I had during that, though, was how can anyone hear anything during the fight scene? Everybody's ears must be blown out.
I thought they talked about that in a scene. I forget whether it was like an early scene where they had guns going off indoors, or maybe it was the end of the dynamite. But Marassi's talking about, like, they were all shouting because they couldn't, because they couldn't.
That was at the when the mansion blew up.
Yeah, right.
Blew up, and then before that, when they were at the wedding breakfast or whatever, like I think Wax had mentioned something like, "I wish I had brought my earplugs or something." But I don't think it gets mentioned in the Sandor Lynch thing. And I'm like, you're in a cavernous space, like the sound must be
echoing on top of itself.
Yeah, and just super distracting.
Do you think dynamite might be a little loud?
Just a bit.
And there's more than one dynamite explosion, right?
Yeah, because there's the initial one, and then Miles blowing himself up, and all this stuff.
Not to mention all the gunfire.
I do appreciate Wax missing his first haze killer round.
Yeah.
Because, like, you have a Chekhov's gun, and then didn't work.
Well, yeah.
Real life moments.
Yeah. Well, that would have been too easy. But then he was able to use that same principle. I'm trying to remember, because he ends up steel pushing the lurcher round, right? Into pull? Or am I thinking of the one he does into push?
I don't know.
Oh, never mind. Don't worry. I don't have my notes.
He kills them all.
Yeah, he kills them all.
Calling back to Wayne and Marassi, when Wayne has to decide, does he go help Wax or does he go help Marassi? He chooses to help Marassi.
It's true.
Who doesn't really need saving, at least initially. Like, later she does.
I mean, they both needed anyway, whatever. Yeah.
I don't really understand what happened with the standoff between Tarson and Marassi. Like, Wayne shoots 2 bubbles, and then the second deflects the first, and then, like, an impossible shot. I don't get what happened. I don't understand it.
So you can't shoot out of a speed bubble, right? Because
it gets distorted.
It gets distorted, and it'll go in a different direction from where it was supposed to be going.
Unpredictably.
Right. But that's what Wax does. He shoots out of the speed bubble, and then he notes which direction the bullet is going in. So then he shoots another shot as Wayne is dropping the speed bubble. So that way his bullets ricochet off of each other. And that makes an impossible angle.
It is super hard
Yeah.
to hit a moving bullet. Like,
Yeah. Well, right. But that's their, and was it, did he shoot? He did shoot a second shot, right? It wasn't a steel push?
yes, after the bubble was dropped. Though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like he lined it up before the bubble dropped. Then
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they're so in sync with each other, man.
it's just super duper implausible.
You had to suspend your disbelief a little too far.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I get that.
Okay. I do love that Miles keeps complaining that Wax keeps making all of his aluminum guns.
Well, and I think, yeah. It's like, do you know how much those cost? Because that's, I mean, yeah.
But even more, I love the fact that Miles, using his lawkeeper skills to track Mr. Suit, Wax was able to kind of pick that up and use it to track him down.
Choice.
Love it. All the pieces coming together. Also, of course, every good lawman has some criminal skills up his sleeves.
Of course.
Got to be able to steal that notebook.
Yeah.
You had some moments that didn't sit well with you. Did we get to them?
Most of them, all except for one. And I think this is probably going to be the hottest of my cold hot takes. I didn't like how Leslie was killed off in the prologue. It felt very much like fridging, which is a trope that, I wasn't too familiar with until I heard Brandon Sanderson himself complaining about it from the Wheel of Time series. But there's this trope, especially in superhero stories, but just in fiction in general, where women in fiction tend to be killed or hurt or just figured for no other reason than to motivate your main character. And at least in this story, Leslie's entire arc is be close to Wax, then die, and be something for Wax to get over or to deal with, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
And it didn't sit right with me. I didn't, didn't like it.
Maybe the other books will help.
Maybe. I don't want to end on a bad vibe though.
Okay. So in the next episode, we are going to spend probably quite a bit of time talking about why the fuck Wax even needs a gun in the first place.
What's our next episode going to be?
I think we're going to talk about broadsheets and religion. But we can spend a little bit of time talking about why a steel pusher needs a gun.
I mean, just besides the...
No. We'll talk about it in another episode. Just ponder that, cousins. Ponder that, cousins. Why would a steel pusher who can move metal of their own, innate ability, why do they need a gun?
Man.
Anyways.
All right, Dougs. You're going to keep calling everyone cousins.
Yes, I am going to keep calling them cousins.
Thanks for podcasting with me, dear.
Thanks for podcasting with me. Thanks for not letting the children distract us too much.
I was going to say, no thanks to those hellions over there. And thanks, audience, for audiencing with us and, enjoying our podcast. Hopefully enjoying. Send us feedback, thoughts, questions. Please reach out at our email address, cosmerecasual@gmail.com, or shoot us a message on social media. Our username is generally Cosmere Casual, or some variant on it, u/Cosmere Casual on Reddit, yada, 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 Instagram, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Our intro and outro music is licensed through Tribe of Noise. The song is Odyssey, and the artist is Ketsa.
And until next time, keep your wits about you.